I also took care of West Indies cricket team and fast bowlers for many years.
Ryan Lara, will this be his night? Big appeal there. Yes, he's got a little inside edge. Ward doesn't look too happy about it. Just a little glance down the wicket.
Clean bowled. It's as simple as that.
There was a time when they also were getting beaten consistently by Indian cricket team.
I think they were getting consistently beaten by India, but hopefully the West Indies cricketers aren't going to blame that on me.
Dr. Vijay, a physiatrist who has spent 3 decades looking after the sports injuries in this country with minimally invasive surgeries, bringing people back on their feet.
So I've invented a technology called carbonaplasty. It's actually in honor of my grandfather, who had a hockey injury and end-stage knee arthritis, and nobody wanted to operate on his knee. I came up with this idea of a 10-minute procedure where you take your own stem cells and you inject them in the arthritic area with amazing results. It's cheap, it's effective, and it's for anyone. Another technology I developed called capsular distension for frozen shoulder, which is very big in India. 2% of the women have it in India, which is especially around menopause, thyroid issue, diabetics, and a simple 20-minute procedure can cure their frozen shoulder.
Driving a Merc or a BMW or a Beamer that you own here in the US, or a Ghat Darshan in Banaras, or maybe going to Sankat Mochan temple, or maybe going to Ganesha temple in Bombay.
Well, Siddhivinayak temple is our family temple for generations, so I'll probably take that. When my grandfather was at the sunset of his life and I was moving to New York, he would say, my son immigrated to the United States, so my grandson will do justice to the city of New York. One day he'll have impact on the world. And I think somewhere in the back of my mind that stuck with me, and New York has given me all the advantages. It's been a privileged journey so far, truly.
If you are a sports enthusiast who follows NBA and the US Open, or you have had sports injuries, also maybe facing excruciating pains, it's likely that New Yorkers, especially the locals, may refer you to Dr. Vijay Vad. Dr. Vijay, a physiatrist who has spent 3 decades looking after the sports injuries in this country with minimally invasive surgeries, bringing people back on their feet, is someone who is known also for his charitable efforts, plus additionally also has been a sports enthusiast himself. Joining me today is Dr. Vad in this beautiful settings of New York, overlooking the towering buildings, the imposing structures. Welcome to this show, Dr. Vad. It's a pleasure having learnt about your vast career. The show is called India Abroad, where we feature the prominent Indians who have done exceedingly well for their own country and for the country that is where you are settled into. My first question to you is, what made you take interest in sports medicine, considering the fact that, it's a very specialized way of looking after a journey of a doctor. Talk me through your journey. What inspired you and what prompted your move, sir?
Sure. So, Ron, thanks for having me on this wonderful show, number one. Our family has been athletes for generations. My grandfather was an amazing tennis player, hockey. My father's 86 years old, plays tennis 4 days a week. And I played competitive tennis growing up. So it was important for me for people to be active. And that's why I chose sports medicine. So we're in the business of restoring quality of life and mobility.
Right. Of course, there are definitely challenges for a doctor like you. I want to understand from you, what are the advantages that you have had as a doctor so far with a specialized career in sports medicine, as well as both the challenges and the advantages, as well as the factors that shaped your career over the 3 decades? Because it's not easy to come here and settle as a doctor and yet achieve the monumental feat that you have done so, sir.
Well, so call it self-fulfilling prophecy. So when my grandfather was at the sunset of his life and I was moving to New York, he would say, my son immigrated to the United States, so my grandson will do justice to the city of New York. one day have impact on the world. And I think somewhere in the back of my mind that stuck with me. And New York has given me all the advantages. Hospital for Special Surgery, where I practice, world famous institution, research. A lot of professional athletes come here. You learn from professional athletes to keep them at the top of their game. What you learn on them, you can apply to the 75-year-old grandmother wanting to walk with her grandchild. You could learn on an 85-year-old grandfather wanting to throw the football, or in India, throw the cricket ball with his grandson. So it's been a privileged journey so far, truly.
Absolutely. No, I also want to understand from you, Dr. Vad, what are the specific sports injuries? Because, when we hear the terms like a tennis elbow, when we hear the terms like musculoskeletal injuries, it's very difficult for a layman to comprehend these terms. But for someone like you who has dealt with such injuries at different stages of your career, what are the specific injuries that you deal with, if you would want to explain it to the viewers as well back home and in the US as well?
So one of the reasons I took care of the men's tennis tour for years is my expertise in treating athletes with back pain.
This was how long back, sir?
So the athletic injuries that affect the low back.
I thought you worked with the US tennis professionals as well.
Yeah, the professional tennis tour.
Correct.
Yeah, I've worked with them for many years because of my expertise in treating athletes with back pain.
Correct.
So that's been a big focus of my career, developing technologies.
Right.
But then also a lot of knee injuries, especially knee arthritis that develops as a result of playing sports. So I've been privileged to develop some amazing technologies in that arena.
Such as?
So I've invented a technology called carbonaplasty. It's actually in honor of my grandfather, who had a hockey injury and end-stage knee arthritis, and nobody wanted to operate on his knee. Nobody wanted to do a total knee replacement. So I came up with this idea of a 10-minute procedure where you take your own stem cells and you inject them in the arthritic area with amazing results.
Yeah.
And I helped develop this technology with my cousin in India, Dr. Vijay Vad, and now we're going to commercialize it here in the US and hopefully globally. It's cheap, it's effective, and it's for anyone from a farmer in the middle of the US to a billionaire in Bombay and everyone in between.
No, why I ask you this question is because very often we come across people who do not understand the relevance of the sports injuries. It's not necessarily that only if you're playing sports that you develop these injuries. Knee arthritis for something, it's a very common disease in older people as well as those who either have been doing a lot of treadmill or running a lot, not realizing that they are injuring their both torsos as well as their knee as well. So how do you come across such people who are not familiar with what has happened to them, but yet when they come to you, explain it to you that these are the pains that they're suffering from?
So like, let's say knee arthritis, okay? A laboratory is like an elite tennis player or elite football player who are at the tail end of their career.
Right.
And it's our job to get them to functioning at the peak performance of their profession on a world level. So top in tennis, top in American football or basketball, the NBA, they get knee arthritis at the tail end of their career. So they're the laboratory. We learn from them, and what we learn from them, we can apply to the 80-year-old grandfather wanting to walk a mile or two every day to keep healthy, because, walking 30 minutes a day keeps the doctor away is one of my famous sayings. But we learn on professional athletes when we apply it to everyday people.
Many decades back, maybe 3 or maybe 2.5, we all in India learnt about the injuries which Sachin Tendulkar had, which was known as rotator cuff, and tennis elbow, golfer's elbow as well. Many of the cricketers went through this, the shoulder dislocations. It's very common in some of the sports. So how different you think an Indian doctor would be treating such surgeries than a US-based doctor?
The diagnosis, India is pretty sophisticated in sports medicine now. But the advantage we have, especially at a hospital like ours, Hospital for Special Surgery, is our MRI capabilities are probably the best in the world. So even a tiny undersurface rotator cuff tear we can diagnose. And a lot of times shoulder and elbow issues go hand in hand. And the luxury we have here are some of the top physical therapists, physiotherapists that we can work with, because our procedures are only as good as the physical therapy done after it.
Right. Another question which I want to ask you is, generally speaking, I mean, of course, you can skip the fact. How much does actually a surgery, the minimally invasive surgery here, cost usually if I were to come and visit you, especially with a rotator cuff or a shoulder dislocation?
So, well, shoulder
And how much time does it usually take to heal and recover?
I think shoulder dislocation is complicated because those can be pretty invasive. But a rotator cuff, whether it's PRP or stem cells that we inject around
Correct.
the tear of the rotator
Right.
cuff, somewhere 10,000-15,000 US dollars is the cost for that.
Over a period of time or at one go?
I think normally it's 1 or 2 injections of the stem cells or PRP that can really help
Correct.
with the issue combined with proper rehab. There's another technology I developed called capsular distension for frozen shoulder, which is very big in India.
Correct.
And that we could solve in 20 minutes.
You mean the surgery is big or the problem is big?
No, the problem is huge. So 2% of the women have it in India, which is especially around menopause, thyroid issues, diabetics. And a simple 20-minute procedure can cure their frozen shoulder.
Correct.
And that costs maybe 5,000 or something.
Yeah.
But I don't think like women with frozen shoulder have to suffer for a month. There's a simple solution that can turn things around in a New York minute.
Correct. In fact, I was listening to you, Dr. Vad, at the UN summit speech as well, where you mentioned about the fact that how it is essential these days to be a frugal eater. You persisted with the fact that you eat less, you walk a lot, you exercise a lot, you sleep well. Are these also essential things by which you can overcome the challenges to avoid these injuries?
Well, absolutely. What I call anti-inflammatory diet is going to avoid the back pain. The onset of knee arthritis is going to be delayed. Also, you have less weight, so your joints love you. So, eat less, eat unprocessed food. Okay, every once in a while you can have Chikoo ice cream or you can have a ladu or something, but if you're having it every
But
day.
I must tell you that you New Yorkers are also known for having your cheesecakes and buffalo wings and whatnot.
I say splurge and be evil once a week.
Right. You see, I mean, I also want to understand from you, Dr. Vad, that considering that you have dealt with so many athletes in the US during your careers in the 3 decades that you have spent here, what is more difficult to deal with? Is it the sports athletes who are more prone to the injuries because of the way that they play, or is it also the regular commoners here who live a life of obese, fighting obesity, diabetes, hypertension, eating food which is dangerous here, or you think it's the both number of cases which you come across?
I think there are a combination of factors. The over-processed food, the obesity is a killer. I mean, it really.
Does that compound the problem that you deal with?
Our success rates are lower in obese people, and they get earlier onset with back issues, knee issues. And by the way, I didn't just take care of U.S. athletes. I also took care of West Indies cricket team and fast bowlers for many years. So Dr. Allen, who is one of our doctors on staff here, was the doctor for the West Indies cricket, and he relied on me to take care of the West Indies cricketers for their back issues.
This was which years when you took
This
care
was
of
back 1997 to about 2007.
There was a time when they also were getting beaten consistently by Indian cricket team, even in the World Cup or when India was traveling to the Caribbeans.
I think they were getting consistently beaten by India, but hopefully the West Indies cricketers aren't going to blame that on me.
So, do you have some pleasant or unpleasant memories of treating and then also seeing them going through a descent in terms of what they were in the 70s, 80s, the mighty cricketers the Joel Garners or the Courtney Walsh or Curtly Ambrose, the men who dominated the West Indian cricketers, the Brian Lara's, swashbuckling left-hander, the way they dominated the 70s, 80s, 90s. you regret the fact that they were not as powerful when you took up their job?
Well, I believe Brian Lara was still around when
You met him?
Towards the end of his career, maybe. But like, you're talking about the Clyde Lloyds and the, that era. I mean, they were very, very dominant. I think a bunch of things happened to West Indies cricket. I think the unity somehow became less. The different islands were fighting each other.
From the Richie Richardson era to the Lara's era. So you met certain cricketers in flesh as well often?
Well, I treated them here. They came to They came here to
but
get
you never
treatment.
went to the Caribbean islands?
I went to the Caribbean islands for vacations, but the cricketers came here to get treated. Especially the fast bowlers get these stress fractures all the way up and down their spine. They get very complicated, unique injuries.
So who were the prominent cricketers you dealt with?
Well, I can't really tell you exactly who I dealt with, but I dealt with fast bowlers and a lot of West Indian cricketers, because Answorth Allen here was one of the head doctors, and he relied on me to help him out with the spine issues. But
do you recall of any incident where when you treated them and they did very well the next morning?
Well, it was not a next morning thing. I mean, a lot of these were like stress fractures up and down the spine. So we had to put together a whole program for them. And they came back a lot of times stronger than before their injury. My verdict was always use the injury as a way to come out stronger on the other end than when you went in. That means better core, more strength.
So why do you think they went through this stress factor so much in the late 90s as compared to 70s? Or is that something which was...
I think it was probably existent in the 70s as well. I wasn't around. But fast bowlers getting stress fractures all the way up and down the spinal column is not an unusual phenomenon. Because fast bowling stress puts tremendous stress on the spine all the way up to the thoracic spine, from the lumbar all the way to the thoracic.
Oh, so it was also common during the 90s as well when you treated them.
Yeah.
This was which year?
1997
to 2000.
96, 97 to about 2006.
Oh, that was a long 10 years.
10 years, yeah.
Tenure. That was also the time, I must tell you, that they managed to win one of the ICC trophies as well.
Yeah.
So you must have had a privilege working with them.
They were gracious. I mean, I really had a great time working with the West Indian cricketers.
Right. Another question which is of usual interest to many people who come here as tourists as well. There are times, Dr. Vad, when the medical insurance claims become a huge problem. Have you faced a certain degree of thing where Indian tourists or maybe international tourists have come to you, and what is your advice to them, especially if they face this problem, either for cure they come here or for just for tourism purpose?
I mean, I think unfortunately the healthcare in the United States is the most expensive in the world, by far. I think it's like almost 20-fold of India and 10-fold of Germany, where my friend Chris Topar practices. So it's insanely expensive to receive healthcare in the US for many reasons. But having said that, sometimes we do that. I say the top institutions in the United States for healthcare, I don't think there is an equivalent.
There is an equivalent to that?
In my opinion, there is not, because they provide care at such a high level. The HSS, Memorial Sloan Kettering, Johns Hopkins, that is tough to compete with for probably any institution in the world. But it's insanely expensive.
Insanely expensive. Of course, it's a privilege, sir, speaking to you on this show. I'll end this interview with a good, quick rapid fire with you, which is more entertaining. Given a choice between buffalo wings, apple pie, or chole bhature, or maybe vada pav back in Maharashtra where you come from 30 years back, what is your first preference in the order?
I think it would probably have to be a very Marathi dish, which is pohe. I don't know if you know what pohe. Pohe is that's probably my number one. Then probably chicken wings number two.
Apple pie, cheesecake.
Apple pie, cheesecake probably distant number three. Chikoo ice cream is my favorite in India. That's number 4.
Lovely. Driving a Merc or a BMW or a Beamer that you own here in the US on the Jersey highways, right up till Boston or wherever, or taking a ferry in Hudson, or a Ghat Darshan in Banaras, or maybe going to Sankat Mochan temple, or maybe going to Ganesha temple in Bombay?
Well, Siddhivinayak temple is our family temple for generations, so I'll probably take that. And I would love to drive there because I love driving in India. It's complete chaos. You know, your blood flows all throughout your body. You feel alive.
Right. Pune Delhi highway or Jersey New York coming back to and fro?
That one I'll probably have to pick the Jersey highway. I mean, I don't mind driving in Mumbai just for a couple miles.
Not going to Khandala?
That one's a tough one. I can drive in India, but nah, I'm not that much of an expert.
So Khandala or moving on the Brooklyn Bridge?
I'll take Khandala.
This may be a tough one for you. Becoming a consultant for Team India cricket, US tennis team, or West Indian Caribbean cricket team?
You know, I'd have to pick Indian cricket team hands down because unfortunately in the US we don't have a sport that the entire country follows. I think in India when the cricket team is playing, I would say 95% people are watching it. It's a national hobby, national sport. I would take that any day.
Last one is equally difficult for you, Dr. Vad. Fixing injuries for India's biggest and world's biggest sports hero in cricket, Sachin Tendulkar, US heroes Andre Agassi, Roddick, or Pete Sampras?
Actually, I would say neither. I would say the grandfather or the grandmother that wants to play with their grandchild.
Okay, we'll give you a choice to have your lips sealed or you can reveal because it's out in the public. You have tweeted Dalai Lama or Bill Gates. True or false?
I can't comment on any of that kind of stuff.
Right. So that was Dr. Vad speaking to us here in New York. What a fabulous career Dr. Vad has had. I mean, it was wonderful speaking to you, sir,
Same
on this
here, Ron.
show.
Just
for the last
one
30
more thing I want to say about expensive US healthcare, but I am inventing this carbonaplasty for knee arthritis, and it was with the farmers in India in mind. It's cheap, it's effective, and I think it's going to have a big impact on reducing knee replacements.
Right. So keep following me, Rohan Dua, on the New Indian as we bring you feisty tales of people who have done exceedingly well outside India on the show India Abroad.